The cargo hauler's steady hand drifted through the outer reaches, its hull scarred from years of navigating asteroid fields and debris zones. Eric Walsh sat in the pilot's chair, running through his daily systems check with the practiced ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The routes out here paid well precisely because most haulers avoided them. Too isolated. Too many things could go wrong with no help for light years in any direction. Eric didn't mind the solitude. He had his music, his books loaded on the data pad, and the satisfaction of knowing his cargo would reach the mining colonies that desperately needed it. At 42, he had been hauling freight for nearly 2 decades. He knew these routes better than he knew his own apartment back on Earth. The communication system crackled with static. Eric frowned and adjusted the frequency. Probably just interference from the nearby nebula. The static continued, then shifted into something that made him sit up straighter. A voice. Small. Frightened. Speaking in broken galactic common with an accent he didn't recognize. Please. Anyone, a human frequency. Please help. Eric's fingers flew across the console, trying to isolate the signal. Human frequency? How did anyone out here know about human emergency channels? Those were restricted, coded. You needed specific equipment to even detect them. This is cargo vessel steady hand, Eric transmitted. I'm receiving your signal. What's your location? The response came through clearer now and Eric's chest tightened. Was a child. The voice couldn't belong to anyone older than 8 or 9 years old. Human? You're human? Please sir, please help. My mother, she went to find food 2 days ago. She didn't come back. I'm scared. I'm so cold. Eric checked his navigation display. The signal originated from Kepler 442c, an uninhabited moon officially listed as off-limits due to dangerous wildlife and unstable terrain. No registered settlements. No authorized personnel. What was a child doing there? Stay calm, Eric said, altering his course toward the moon. What's your name? What species are you? My name is Kira. I am Velari. My mother's name is Vera. We were traveling to the colony on Epsilon Station when our ship had problems. We crashed here 3 weeks ago. We found shelter in caves. Mother went looking for plants we could eat, but she never came back. Velari. Eric searched his mental database. Herbivorous species from the outer rim. Prey biology. Low body temperature tolerance. If the child had been alone for 2 days in this region's climate, she was probably hypothermic. I'm coming to get you, Kira, Eric said. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Can you tell me exactly where you are? The child's relief was audible even through the static. She described her location near a rock formation that looked like a sleeping animal. Eric programmed the coordinates and pushed his engines harder than recommended. The steady hand protested with warning lights, but Eric ignored them. Landing on Kepler 442c violated about 15 different coalition regulations. The moon was quarantined for good reasons. But Eric had never been good at following rules when they didn't make sense. A child was alone and scared. Her mother was missing. Nothing else mattered. The moon's surface was harsh and unwelcoming. Rocky terrain stretched in all directions, dotted with patches of twisted vegetation that looked more threatening than nourishing. Eric grabbed his emergency kit, a basic scanner, and his father's old hunting rifle. He hadn't fired it in years, but something about this situation made him want it close. He found Kira huddled inside a shallow cave, wrapped in a thermal blanket that had clearly come from a ship's emergency supplies. She was small, maybe 3 feet tall, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed too big for her delicate face. Her species reminded Eric of pictures he'd seen of deer back on Earth. Graceful. Fragile. Built for running, not fighting. When Kira saw Eric, she scrambled backward, pressing herself against the cave wall. Her eyes went wide with terror. Eric stopped immediately and crouched down, making himself smaller. Hey, it's okay. I'm Eric. We talked on the radio, remember? You're really a human? Kira whispered. I've heard stories. They say humans are from a death world. That you're predators. That you never stop chasing prey. Eric felt a pang in his chest. So even children in the galaxy grew up hearing scary stories about humans? Some of that is true, he admitted. But it doesn't mean I'm going to hurt you. I came to help. That's what humans do when someone asks. Slowly, carefully, he extended his hand. Kira stared at it for a long moment before reaching out with her own small fingers. Her skin was ice cold. When did you last eat? Eric asked. Yesterday morning. I found some mushrooms, but I don't know if they were safe. My stomach hurts. Eric pulled out an emergency ration bar from his kit and broke off a small piece. This is designed for multiple species. Try a little bit first. While Kira ate, Eric checked his scanner. The device picked up the crashed ship's signature about 2 kilometers east. But there were other readings too. Energy signatures that didn't match natural formations. His military training from years ago kicked in, and he recognized the pattern immediately. Traps. Sophisticated ones. The kind used by hunters. Kira, Eric said carefully, when your mother left, which direction did she go? The child pointed east. Exactly where the energy signatures clustered. Eric's jaw tightened. I need you to stay here. Keep warm. I'm going to find your mother. Will you bring her back? Kira's voice was so small, so hopeful. I'm going to try my best, Eric promised. He meant it. But as he checked his rifle and started toward the energy signatures, a cold feeling settled in his gut. His scanner showed more than just traps. There were life signs. Large ones. Moving in coordinated patterns. And heat signatures from what looked like temporary structures. This wasn't just dangerous wildlife. Someone was hunting on this moon. And Eric had a terrible feeling he knew what kind of prey they preferred. The scanner beeped urgently. One of the biosigns matched Velari physiology. Stationary. Approximately 3 kilometers ahead, right in the middle of the trap network. Eric clicked off the safety on his rifle and started walking. Behind him, Kira called out one more time. Please bring my mother home. Eric didn't answer. He just kept walking into the wilderness, toward whatever was waiting in those killing fields ahead. The terrain grew rougher as Eric pushed deeper into the wilderness. His scanner led him through twisted rock formations and patches of thorny vegetation that seemed designed to cut exposed skin. The energy signatures grew stronger with each step. Whatever technology was being used here, it was sophisticated and powerful. Eric crested a ridge and stopped cold. Below him stretched a valley that made his blood run cold. Tall posts stood in a grid pattern, each topped with glowing energy emitters. Between them, shimmering barriers created invisible walls and corridors. It was a maze. A killing field designed to funnel prey exactly where the hunters wanted them. But it was what lay scattered across the valley floor that made Eric's hands shake with rage. Bodies. Dozens of them in various stages of decay. He recognized at least 6 different species. Some were small and delicate like the Velari. Others were larger, more robust. All were clearly sentient species. All had been killed for sport. This wasn't survival hunting. This wasn't even poaching for profit. This was murder dressed up as entertainment. Eric forced himself to breathe slowly and scan the area methodically. His military instructors would have been proud. Anger was natural, but it couldn't cloud judgment. Not now. Not when someone's life depended on him. The scanner picked up Vera's biosign 300 meters ahead, deeper in the maze. Eric studied the energy barrier pattern, looking for gaps and timing. The barriers flickered in sequence, creating brief windows where someone could pass through. Whoever designed this was cruel and clever. Prey could see escape routes. They just couldn't reach them before the barriers reactivated. Eric waited for the right moment and slipped through the first barrier. His skin tingled as he passed near the energy field. The second barrier required him to sprint and dive. The third forced him to crawl under a low point. Each transition was calculated to exhaust and confuse prey animals. He found Vera suspended 2 feet off the ground in a gravitic snare. The device created a localized gravity field that held her immobile while slowly crushing her body with increasing pressure. She was conscious but barely. Her pale blue skin had taken on a grayish tinge. Blood matted her side where something had clawed her. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. Vera, Eric called softly as he approached. Your daughter Kira sent me. I'm human. I'm here to help. Vera's eyes widened in terror. She tried to pull away but couldn't move in the snare's grip. Stay back, please. I don't want to die being eaten. I'm not going to eat you, Eric said firmly. He studied the snare mechanism. It was attached to a central post with a control panel. The symbols were in a script he didn't recognize, but the technology was straightforward enough. Probably a timer and remote trigger system. You're a predator, Vera gasped. From Earth. The death world. Everyone knows humans hunt prey for days without stopping. That's persistence hunting, Eric explained as he examined the control panel. We run prey down until they collapse from exhaustion. But we only did that for food and survival. We don't hunt people for fun. He pulled out a small toolkit. This is going to take a minute. Try to stay calm. There are hunters here, Vera whispered urgently. They come and go. They watch their prey suffer. They laugh about it. I've been here 2 days. They keep me alive on purpose. They said I'm bait for the predators. They want to watch me get torn apart. Eric's jaw clenched. That's not going to happen. He was halfway through bypassing the control panel when his scanner suddenly screamed a proximity warning. Eric spun around, bringing up his rifle. 3 figures materialized from active camouflage 30 meters away. They were Krolvax. 7 feet tall with thick scaled skin and multiple arms. Each carried weapons that looked expensive and well-maintained. Their armor was decorated with trophies. Plus, strips of different colored skin. The lead Krolvax laughed, a deep rumbling sound. Well, what do we have here? Is that a human? The other 2 Krolvax moved to flank Eric, cutting off retreat angles. They moved with practiced coordination. This wasn't their first hunt. This preserve is private property, the leader continued. You're trespassing. Though I must say, finding a human out here is quite unexpected. And quite valuable. Eric kept his rifle trained on the leader. You're hunting sentient species. That's illegal under coalition law. 16 different treaties actually. Treaties? The Krolvax spat the word. Made by weak species who fear the strong. Out here there is no law. Only predator and prey. He gestured at the valley with one of his 4 arms. And you've walked right into our hunting preserve. Over 40 successful hunts. Some species fought back. Most just ran. All of them died eventually. Let her go, Eric said, nodding toward Vera. Take your equipment and leave this moon. I won't report this if you leave now. The 3 Krolvax burst into laughter. You think you're in a position to negotiate? Human or not, you're just one small creature with a primitive projectile weapon. We have energy rifles, drones, and this entire preserve under our control. The leader's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. Tell you what. We'll make this interesting. We'll turn off the snare and give you a 5-minute head start. If you can escape the preserve carrying your little prey friend, we'll let you both go. But if we catch you... He touched one of the trophies on his armor. Well, a human hide would look magnificent on my collection wall. Eric didn't lower his rifle. That's not much of a sporting chance. It's more than we gave the others, another Krolvax said. Most we just shot where they stood. But humans are supposed to be special, right? Let's see how long you last. Eric's mind raced through options. 3 armed Krolvax. Unknown number of automated defenses. An injured Velari he'd need to carry. The preserve designed specifically to trap and exhaust prey. Every tactical consideration said this was unwinnable. But Kira was waiting in that cave. And Vera was counting on him. All right, Eric said slowly. But I want your word as hunters. You turn off the snare, give me 5 minutes, and you don't shoot us until the time is up. The lead Krolvax's teeth showed in what might have been a smile. Agreed. This will be entertaining. He pressed a control on his armor. The gravitic snare released with a hiss. Vera dropped to the ground with a cry of pain. Eric moved to her side, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. He lifted Vera as gently as he could. She weighed maybe 90 pounds. Light by human standards, but still a burden when running for your life. 5 minutes starts now, the Krolvax announced. Run, little prey. Run fast. Eric looked each of them in the eye. They expected to see fear. Instead, they saw something that made even these experienced hunters pause. They saw calculation. Planning. The cold assessment of a predator choosing its moment. Then Eric turned and began moving through the maze, Vera clutched against his chest. Behind him, the Krolvax checked their weapons and activated their tracking equipment. They were already discussing which human body parts would make the best trophies. They had no idea they had just made a fatal mistake. They had given a persistence hunter exactly what he needed most. Time and distance. And Eric Walsh had spent 20 years hauling cargo through the most dangerous regions of space by being smarter, more stubborn, and harder to kill than anyone expected. The hunt was on. But the Krolvax didn't understand yet who the real predator was. Eric ran at a steady pace through the maze of energy barriers, Vera clutched against his chest. She weighed less than his usual cargo loads, but carrying any weight while running required technique. He kept his breathing even and his steps measured. This wasn't a sprint. This was the beginning of something humans had perfected over millions of years. You should leave me, Vera whispered, her voice weak. Save yourself. You can't outrun them while carrying me. I'm not trying to outrun them, Eric replied. He ducked under a low barrier and continued without breaking stride. I'm trying to outlast them. Behind them, Eric could hear the Krolvax laughing and calling out to each other. They weren't hurrying. Why would they? Their prey was burdened and trapped in a maze they controlled. This was entertainment for them. Eric reached the edge of the valley and kept going into the rocky wilderness beyond. His scanner showed the Krolvax following at a leisurely pace, maybe 200 meters back. Perfect. He needed them confident. Overconfident. What's your plan? Vera asked, her large eyes searching his face. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, Eric explained as he climbed over a rock formation. We're not the fastest or strongest, but we can keep going when everything else has to stop. We can sweat to cool down while running. Most species can't. We can track prey for hours or days until it collapses from exhaustion. But they have technology. Weapons. You have nothing. Eric smiled grimly. I have knowledge. And they just made their first mistake. He set Vera down gently behind a cluster of rocks. She winced as her injured side touched the ground. Eric pulled out his emergency kit and quickly applied a medical patch to her wounds. It wasn't much, but it would stop the bleeding and ease the pain. Stay here and stay quiet, Eric said. He pulled off his jacket and draped it over a nearby rock formation in clear view. Then he scattered some disturbed dirt and broken branches to make an obvious trail leading east. What are you doing? Vera asked. Making them think we went that direction. Eric pointed west. We're actually going this way. But first I'm going to slow them down. He worked quickly, using materials from his kit and the environment. A length of cable stretched across a narrow pass between rocks, positioned at ankle height. Not enough to seriously hurt, but enough to trip. Sharp rocks arranged in a shallow pit, covered with loose dirt and dried vegetation. A classic trap that worked because people weren't looking down when they were chasing prey. The Krolvax voices grew louder. They were closing in, still casual and confident. Eric returned to Vera and lifted her again. Hold on tight. This is going to get rough. He moved west, away from his false trail, keeping to rocky ground that wouldn't show footprints. His military training came back like muscle memory. Land navigation. Tracking. Counter-tracking. Skills he hadn't used in 20 years but never forgot. A shout of anger erupted behind them. One of the Krolvax had found the cable trap. Eric heard a heavy crash and cursing in 3 different languages. He allowed himself a small smile and kept moving. The terrain grew steeper. Eric's legs burned and sweat poured down his face, but he maintained his pace. Vera had stopped protesting and now clung to him silently, watching the human carry her through impossible terrain without slowing. How are you still going? She finally asked. You've been running for 30 minutes. Carrying me. Any other species would have collapsed. Humans have more endurance than most species give us credit for, Eric said. His breathing was heavy but controlled. Our bodies are built for this. Big lungs. Efficient cooling. Muscles designed for sustained effort instead of bursts. Back on Earth, our ancestors used to hunt by just following animals until they literally died from exhaustion and heat. Another angry shout behind them, followed by a howl of pain. Someone had found the rock pit. Eric's traps were working. But then a new sound cut through the air. A high-pitched mechanical whine. Eric's scanner lit up with warnings. He dove behind a boulder just as energy blasts struck the rocks where he'd been standing a moment before. Drones? Eric growled. He should have expected this. The Krolvax weren't stupid. When the chase wasn't going their way, they'd use technology. 3 small aerial drones swept over the area, scanning with bright lights. Eric pressed himself and Vera against the boulder, trying to stay in the shadow. The drones were equipped with thermal scanners. They'd find him eventually. Human. The lead Krolvax's voice boomed across the landscape. Impressive tricks. You injured 2 of my companions. But the game ends now. My drones will flush you out and we will claim our trophy. Eric looked at Vera. How good are you at staying absolutely still? What? Don't move. Don't even breathe hard. Trust me. Eric pulled out his rifle and checked the ammunition. 6 rounds. Not enough for a prolonged firefight, but he didn't need prolonged. He needed precise. The drones swept closer, their scanners painting the landscape in geometric patterns of light. Eric waited until one passed directly overhead, then stepped out and fired. The rifle crack echoed across the rocks. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks and metal. The other 2 drones immediately converged on his position. Eric was already moving, using the terrain for cover. He fired twice more, dropping another drone. The 3rd drone circled warily, staying at a distance. You'll run out of ammunition before I run out of drones? The Krolvax called out. Surrender now and I'll make your death quick. Eric didn't waste breath responding. He studied the remaining drone's flight pattern. It was staying high, out of easy rifle range. Smart programming. But drones needed to fly in predictable arcs to maintain stability. He waited for the right moment, then fired his 4th shot. The drone sparked but didn't fall. His fifth shot finished it. One round left. Eric, Vera whispered urgently. There are more drones coming. I can hear them. She was right. The mechanical whine grew louder. Eric's scanner showed 5 more drones launching from the Krolvax position. They were done playing around. But Eric had bought himself 20 minutes of confusion and delay. And in that time he'd covered over 2 kilometers while the Krolvax stopped to check their wounded companions and deploy their technology. The hunters had lost their advantage. Eric lifted Vera once more and started running. Not away from the Krolvax this time. He was circling back, using the terrain to approach from an unexpected angle. What are you doing? Vera asked in disbelief. You're going toward them. They think we're prey running away, Eric explained. His breathing was harder now but still controlled. They're not expecting us to attack. Humans learned something important in our evolution. Sometimes the best defense is becoming the predator. The drones swept past them, searching to the west where Eric should have been. The Krolvax voices grew clearer, coordinating their search pattern. 2 were limping from Eric's traps. The leader was directing them with angry commands. Eric found a sheltered position with good visibility and set Vera down carefully. He checked his last bullet and studied the Krolvax positions through his scope. What now? Vera whispered. Now, Eric said quietly, I show them what happens when you hunt something that hunts back. Eric pressed the emergency beacon on his communicator, the signal broadcasting on all coalition frequencies. The device beeped twice, confirming transmission. A response came back immediately in text form. Authorities notified. Estimated arrival time 6 hours. Maintain position if possible. 6 hours. Vera wouldn't last 6 hours with her injuries. And the Krolvax wouldn't wait that long either. Help is coming, Eric told Vera quietly. But we need to survive until then. 6 hours? Vera's voice was weak. I heard the message. They're too far away. Then we make it work. Eric studied the drones circling in the distance. They were searching in a grid pattern, systematic and thorough. Eventually they'd find this position. He needed a new plan. Eric pulled out his scanner and adjusted the settings, searching for the drone's control frequency. Military drones used encrypted signals, but hunting drones were commercial equipment. Cheaper. Less secure. There had to be a weakness. What are you doing? Vera asked. Humans are good at 2 things, Eric muttered as he worked. Endurance and adaptation. We're not stronger than most species, but we figure things out fast. We make tools. We solve problems. His scanner locked onto a signal. And we turn our enemies' weapons against them. The drones used a standard commercial protocol with basic encryption. Eric had seen similar systems on cargo security drones. He pulled up a bypass program on his datapad, something he used to override stubborn loading bay doors. With a few modifications it might work on these drones. The Krolvax voices grew closer. They were moving methodically now, angry but focused. 2 were injured from Eric's traps, but all 3 were still hunting. Eric could hear them coordinating their search, promising creative tortures when they found him. Eric's datapad beeped. Connection established. He now had limited access to the drone network. Got you, he whispered. The nearest drone suddenly veered off course, its lights flickering. Eric sent commands through the hijacked connection, overriding its targeting protocols. The drone spun in place, confused, then shot toward the Krolvax position and opened fire. What the lead Krolvax's voice roared in surprise. Energy blasts lit up the rocks. The other drones, following their programmed formation, converged on the area where their companion was firing. Chaos erupted. Eric grabbed Vera and moved while the Krolvax were distracted. He headed toward their base camp, the temporary structures he'd seen on his scanner earlier. If they had drones, they had other equipment. Medical supplies for Vera. Better weapons for him. Maybe even communications gear. You turned their drones against them, Vera said in amazement. How? Cheap equipment, Eric replied. They spent money on fancy weapons and armor, but skimped on security for their tech. Classic mistake. He paused behind a rock formation to catch his breath. Humans have been hacking systems since we invented computers. It's what we do. They reached the Krolvax camp 20 minutes later. It was larger than Eric expected. 3 shelters, equipment storage, and a horrifying display wall covered with trophies from previous hunts. Skulls, pelts, preserved body parts. Each one labeled with species name and kill date. Eric felt his anger surge again, but he forced it down. Anger later. Survival now. He found medical supplies in the first shelter and treated Vera's wounds properly. Real bandages, pain medication, even a portable healing unit designed for multiple species. He set it to Vilari physiology and let it work on her damaged ribs and lacerations. Better? He asked. Vera nodded, tears in her large eyes. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. Humans are supposed to be cold. Practical. Why risk your life? Because your daughter asked me to help her mom, Eric said simply. And because what they're doing here is wrong. They've killed dozens of people. Sentient beings with families. With lives. They did it for fun. He loaded a Krolvax energy rifle, checking its power cell. Someone has to stop them. But you could just run now. Take me back to Kira. Wait for the authorities. Eric shook his head. 6 hours is a long time. They'd track us down. They'd kill us before help arrived. And even if we escaped, they'd just move their operation somewhere else. Kill more people. He met her eyes. No. This ends here. Today. Vera stared at him, understanding dawning. You're not trying to escape anymore. You're hunting them. Yes. But they're trained hunters. Heavily armed. You're one human with stolen equipment. Eric smiled without humor. They're hunters used to prey that runs away. That panics. That gives up. They've never faced something that doesn't stop. That learns. That fights back smarter instead of harder. He checked his scanner, tracking the Krolvax positions. They're still trying to figure out what happened with their drones. They're regrouping, confused. That's my advantage. He handed Vera a communicator. Stay here. The healing unit needs another hour to work. If I'm not back in 2 hours, the authorities will find you here. Tell them everything. Eric, wait. But he was already moving, disappearing into the rocks with the silent efficiency of a predator who'd chosen his prey. The 2 injured Krolvax had fallen behind, struggling with their wounds. Eric found them arguing near a rock formation, blaming each other for falling into the humans' traps. They never saw him coming. Eric used a Krolvax stun weapon set to maximum. Both hunters dropped without a sound. He secured them with their own restraints, taking their weapons and communication gear. 2 down. 1 to go. The lead Krolvax was the dangerous one. Experienced. Cautious. He'd realized something was wrong when his companions stopped responding. Eric watched through the rifle's scope as the hunter activated his armor's defenses and called for his remaining drones. But Eric had learned the drone control system. As the drones launched, he sent override commands. 3 drones turned on their owner. The Krolvax's shields flared as energy blasts struck from all directions. He returned fire, destroying his own drones, but the attack had rattled him. Human, the Krolvax roared. Face me. Fight with honor. Eric considered responding, then decided against it. Predators didn't announce themselves. They waited for the right moment. The Krolvax moved through the preserve, hunting for Eric now instead of Vera. The roles had completely reversed. The hunter had become prey and he was starting to realize it. His movements grew jerky. Panicked, he fired at shadows. Eric followed at a distance, never letting the Krolvax rest. Every time the hunter stopped to scan or catch his breath, Eric fired a single shot near him. Not to kill. To keep him moving. To exhaust him. This was persistence hunting in its purest form. Not chasing with speed but with relentless, patient pressure. Never stopping. Never giving up. Waiting for the prey to collapse from exhaustion and fear. After an hour, the Krolvax was stumbling. After 90 minutes, he was gasping for air. His species wasn't built for sustained exertion. He needed rest. Recovery time. But Eric never gave it to him. Finally, the Krolvax collapsed against a rock, his weapon falling from shaking hands. Eric approached carefully, rifle ready. The hunter looked up at the human with something like disbelief in his eyes. Impossible. You should be exhausted. How are you still going? I'm human, Eric said quietly. We don't stop. The coalition security ships descended through Kepler 442c's atmosphere in tight formation, their searchlights sweeping across the moon's rocky surface. Captain Thorne of the Galactic Wildlife Authority stood at the bridge viewport, reviewing the emergency beacon data. A human cargo hauler had reported illegal hunting operations. Single operator. Possibly injured or dead by now. Sir, we're detecting multiple life signs, the scanner operator reported. 3 Krolvax signatures. 2 Velari. And 1 human. The human still alive? Thorne's antennae twitched in surprise. After 6 hours with Krolvax hunters? Yes, sir. And according to these readings, the Krolvax biosigns show elevated stress indicators. The humans are remarkably stable. Thorne exchanged glances with his security chief. That made no sense. unless the human had somehow managed to hide successfully for 6 hours. But the terrain scans showed this was a hunting preserve, designed specifically to prevent escape. The ships landed near the energy barrier network. Thorne led a team of 12 armed officers into the preserve, weapons ready. They found the first scene within minutes. 2 Krolvax hunters bound and unconscious, surrounded by confiscated weapons and equipment. Both showed signs of injuries from crude but effective traps. "Scan for the human," Thorne ordered, "and proceed with caution. We don't know what we're walking into." They found Eric 20 minutes later, sitting on a rock with a captured energy rifle across his lap. At his feet, secured with multiple restraints, lay the lead Krolvax hunter. The alien was alive but looked like he'd been through a nightmare. His armor was scorched and dented. His eyes held a haunted quality Thorne had seen before in prey animals. Eric looked up as the officers approached. He was covered in dirt and sweat, his clothes torn, but he was calm. Too calm for someone who'd supposedly been hunted for 6 hours. "Eric Walsh?" Thorne asked carefully. "That's me." Eric stood slowly, setting the rifle down. "The other 2 Krolvax are secured about half a kilometer east. You'll want medical teams for all 3, but they're stable. And there's a Velari female named Vera in their camp who needs immediate medical attention. Her daughter Kira is in a cave 3 kilometers northwest." Thorne's antennae twitched rapidly. "You secured all 3 hunters?" "Alone. They gave me a sporting chance." Eric's voice was flat. "I made them regret it." The security chief was already scanning the area with a data recorder. "Captain, you need to see this." What they found over the next hour made even seasoned Wildlife Authority officers sick. The trophy wall with its labeled kills. The hunting equipment designed specifically for sentient prey. The energy barriers that turned the entire valley into a killing maze. Records on data pads showing 43 confirmed kills over 18 months. Species from across the coalition. Some endangered. All sentient. And through it all, Eric had documented everything with his scanner and communicator. Time-stamped recordings. Spatial coordinates. Even footage of the Krolvax admitting their crimes. "How did you?" Thorne started then stopped. "You're just a cargo hauler." "I was military once," Eric said. "Long time ago. And humans are good at adapting." He looked toward the camp. "How's Vera?" "The medical team is treating her now. She'll survive thanks to your first aid." Thorne studied the human curiously. "Mr. Walsh, do you understand what you've done? You've single-handedly dismantled one of the largest illegal hunting operations in this sector. 3 Krolvax hunters with military-grade equipment and experience. You should be dead." Eric shrugged. "A kid asked me to help find her mom. I couldn't exactly say no." Before Thorne could respond, a commotion erupted from the camp. Medical personnel were bringing Vera on a stretcher. When she saw Eric, she insisted they stop. She struggled to sit up despite the medics' protests. "That human," Vera said, her voice carrying across the preserve. "Eric Walsh saved my life. He carried me while injured, protected me from hunters, and then hunted them down to make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. He risked everything for strangers." Another ship landed, and more coalition officials emerged. Among them was a Velari diplomatic envoy who'd been en route when the distress call went out. He rushed to Vera's side, speaking rapidly in their native language. Thorne's communicator buzzed. His second officer's voice came through urgently. "Captain, the human's initial transmission has gone viral on the galactic network. The child's plea for help and his response. It's been viewed over 50 million times in the last 3 hours." "What?" "Sir, the message 'Human, please help my mom' is trending across 40 systems. News agencies are calling him a hero. The Velari government is already drafting a formal recognition. This is becoming a major story." Thorne looked at Eric, who seemed completely unaware of the attention he was attracting. The human was focused on making sure Vera was comfortable and asking about Kira. More ships arrived over the next hour. News crews. Coalition officials. Representatives from a dozen different species whose citizens had disappeared in this region. All of them wanted to see the human who'd taken down the Krolvax hunting ring. Eric tried to deflect the attention, but Vera wouldn't let him hide. "Tell them," she insisted. "Tell them what you did." So Eric explained, simply and clearly, how he'd investigated the distress call, found the preserve, carried Vera to safety, turned the hunters' technology against them, used human endurance and adaptability to survive and fight back. The Krolvax hunters were taken into custody, their expressions still shell-shocked. The lead hunter kept muttering about the human who never stopped, who turned from prey to predator, who hunted him like an animal. Captain Thorne interviewed Eric extensively, recording every detail for the official report. When they brought Kira to the camp and she ran crying into her mother's arms, even the hardened security officers felt their eyes water. The small Villari child looked at Eric with something like worship. "You saved my mother," Kira said, her voice small but clear. "Just like you promised. You're a hero." "I'm really not," Eric said uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Thorne interjected. "Most beings wouldn't have investigated an unauthorized transmission. Wouldn't have landed on a forbidden moon. Wouldn't have fought 3 armed hunters to save strangers. You did what humans do best. You refused to give up." The Villari diplomatic envoy approached Eric formally. "On behalf of the Villari people, I offer you honorary citizenship and our deepest gratitude. Your actions have saved not just Vera and Kira, but prevented countless future murders. The Krolvax clan will face full prosecution. Their hunting preserve will be destroyed." Eric nodded. "Just make sure the families of the victims know what happened here. They deserve answers." News of the rescue spread across the galaxy faster than lightspeed communications. "Human answers child's plea" became the headline. The recording of Kira's frightened voice saying, "Human, please help my mom," played on news networks everywhere. Eric's response, arriving against all odds, became a symbol of human determination. The Krolvax clan tried to use political influence to protect their members, but the evidence was overwhelming. The documented kills, the testimonies, the physical preserve itself. 3 Krolvax hunters received life sentences. Their clan was sanctioned and stripped of hunting rights across coalition space. Eric returned to the Steady Hand a week later, after giving depositions and testimony to half a dozen different agencies. He'd declined awards, speaking engagements, and even a lucrative book deal. All he wanted was to get back to his cargo routes. But before he left, Kira gave him a small crystal token, a Villari symbol of eternal friendship. "For the human who saved my mom," she said. "When I grow up, I want to be brave like humans. I want to help people like you do." Eric knelt down to her level. "You're already brave, Kira. You called for help when you were scared and alone. That took real courage. Don't forget that." As the Steady Hand lifted off from Kepler 442c, Eric looked back at the moon one last time. The coalition was already dismantling the hunting preserve, turning it into a memorial for the victims. Somewhere down there, a mother and daughter were alive because a child had called for help and a human had answered. Eric settled into his pilot chair and set course for his next cargo run. His communicator showed 300 unread messages from news agencies and officials. He deleted them all except one. It was a voice message from Kira. "Thank you, Eric. You're my hero." Eric smiled and saved the message. Then he engaged the engines and headed back into the void. Just another cargo hauler doing his job. Helping where he could. Being human in a galaxy that was still learning what that truly meant. Somewhere in the outer reaches, a child slept peacefully next to her mother, no longer afraid of the dark. And across the galaxy, other beings heard the story and learned an important lesson. When a human is asked for help, especially by a child, they don't calculate odds or consider regulations. They just show up. And they don't stop until the job is done.